And welcome to another episode of Gopher Gridiron Radio. I'm Luke Buer.
And I am Gopher Gazette, publisher, owner, editor in chief, the bane of Luke Buer's existence of gophergazette.com. I am Ryan Burns, and we are joining you as Luke. We are somehow, I believe, if my Tartan High education is correct, somewhere around 6 weeks from the season opening, to the point where we're about 5, 6, 7 days from Chicago Big Ten Media Days, and then we're about 10 days from fall camp kicking off around August 3rd. I know a lot of you want to know, when is the first day of fall camp? I've heard August 3rd. So we've almost made it, which means, unfortunately for people, they get to look at me, but pleasantly for them, they get to see what I told Luke in the pre-production meeting on the YouTube channel of Gopher Gazette is probably the most wonderful beer that you're probably going to see. I will say, at least this week. I know it's probably the one that I like to see the most here, Luke. So I'm glad that the people get to behold that magnificent thing you got underneath your lips.
Again, the Spotify comments, the Twitter mentions, the Gopher Illustrated whatever message board. Probably the best message I've seen in some time was some fine individual that said, "That is not what I expected Luke Buer to look like." And
I
I was
mean,
like, "This is
you
what
think
I've
it's
looked
good
like
or
my
bad?
whole life." Okay, so Ryan, I wanted to start off by mentioning I'm wearing black today.
Okay.
This is in honor of what I think was my own funeral on gophergazette.com in the mentions. Because apparently, because Dan Owen made an appearance, everybody thought that I, one, got kicked off the podcast,
Yep.
and two, it was nice to be wanted, but I have come back from my own funeral. I'm here, and I am ready for season 2026.
Well, unfortunately, I guess fortunately, depending upon how you look at it, I value Luke Buer. And Luke and I have been together a long time. And Luke is not going anywhere. We're just going to have some different type of guests, especially if Luke's schedule can't align with what we need to
Yeah,
do to get content out on a given week. But I think, as far as I know, Luke, is this you committing to our Wednesdays and Sunday shows during the season?
110% committed.
Okay.
Um,
Hashtag blessed.
Also, no questions, or I don't know what the thing is right now. Like, or
Respect my
maybe
decision.
here's what it is. Here's what it is. Respect my decision.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Well, the other part I want to make sure that people know about is, just here in the last few days, this has been something that Luke has been on me about since we did the last one. Now, this is going to be a little bit different of a version from what we did at the brewery there in Northeast. But Luke, we are doing a Gopher Gridiron Radio live event at the end of August.
yeah, so we have a new partner for the season. This is Launchpad down in Shakopee. We'll talk a lot more about it, but it'll be there to kick off the season. It'll be fun to kick off the 2026 season. And I do want to highlight the fact the
Mhm.
last time we had one of these events, uh, there were somewhat expectations for the season, but those expectations were blown through the ceiling because that was the 2019 season.
Right.
So yeah, we're gonna do a live event. We'll have a happy hour. It'll be on the 24th. The
So
timing in the
Monday,
specific
August
timing,
24th.
yeah, August 24th.
Okay.
Yeah, but the specific timing will have more details. But just pencil off in your later afternoon, early evening. Come
Mhm.
hang out with us at Launchpad. It'll be fun. We'll have a good time. So keep listening to the episodes to come. There'll be more details on social media and whatnot. But it should be a really good evening.
Yeah, it's Launchpad Golf, a place where I just was last weekend to try it out. It's a lot of fun down there at Mystic Lake, which, if you're wondering where is this place, think of just Mystic Lake Casino down there. That's just going to give you a frame of reference. Daniel House will be joining us because it's going to be
Yes.
the annual. I should say, I should go find a crown right now
I think it's
because,
the it, oh, I think I still in the lead. I just want to put that out there.
well, I'm just telling you, objects in the mirror are closer than they appear, me boy. And if you want to be able to meet myself, Luke Buer, Daniel House, like we said, Monday, August 24th, So it's about 10 days before the season actually kicks off. Come hang out with us down at Launchpad Golf. Should be a lot of fun.
Yep, we'll do our annual draft. I think this will be the fifth one, a really good reason to celebrate. And I'm hoping that it'll be a fun event. We'll talk more than just simply the draft itself, but it's our Big Ten Honors Draft, something we've done now for a handful of years, which has been fun. Okay, Ryan, we should get into this specific episode. I wanted to let people know that you picked the topic for this episode, which I wholly endorse fully. And you titled it "The Biggest Questions and Storylines of the 2026 Season."
Right.
I took that information, I made a list, typed down some notes. So I've
Mhm.
got some things I want to touch on. So I feel like we can go kind of in alternating fashion. And being that you're the expert, I think you should go first because I imagine we're going to have a fair amount of overlap here.
Yeah, that was something I was a little worried about because we have not exchanged notes. I want to make sure that people know that. Why is that important to know? Is because I think Luke's viewpoint versus my viewpoint. Again, I'm in the trenches. Luke's still in the war, but it's just something to where we're so close to the season, and it's every single day of my life for Gopher Gazette is thinking about Gopher football and thinking about theoreticals and thinking about questions and storylines. And so I figured to myself, if I'm having these discussions in my own head, we should probably just do a podcast episode about it because
Yeah.
many of the thousands of listeners that we have are probably going to be wanting to bounce ideas off their family members, their fans, or their fans, certainly. But that's where, with this season specifically, I guess where I want to start is one that, again, this is important. I don't know that important is the right word, but it's one of the things where the way I like to phrase it is I'm not a trashy television guy. And stay with me here. I know this is going to
I'll
be quite
stick.
the tangent.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
stick.
Like my wife, I've watched enough in the background of like 90 Day Fiance or Below Deck or Lord forbid if it's Love Island. Like those people are all legitimately horrific people, and I cannot get into it. And I know some people do, but like that's where if I'm going to make the equivalent of like what's one of the like underlying tones of whether it's success or failure on the field that you have to be able to think about at a high level is the fact that PJ Fleck, Minnesota's head football coach, is electing to go into this season with not one, but two coordinators, both of his offensive and defensive coordinators on 1 year deals, AKA Luke. Their deals expire after the season. So why is this something that I've spent so much time thinking about? I think, and I'm pretty sure, okay, I'm like 95% sure in this statement that they are the only pair of coordinators across the entire Big Ten. And my assumption is in Power Two to just not have a deal come, say, January 31st. So if they perform well, which all of us are hoping that the offense and the defense can take the next step, we'll get into a variety of topics, offense, defense, special teams related.
Mm-hmm.
But if they do well, why that's important is are we actually going to see Mark Coyle and PJ Fleck in this administration pony up money to keep coordinators? Because that is, and why I continue to go off on this is I've had this discussion this offseason with a high ranking Gopher administrator. It's saying, do you know that this is a problem? And that's the way I phrased it to them. And they said that this is something that they've talked about amongst the highest level in the athletic department, that they know they have to rectify this one way or another. So if they perform, are you going to be actually bumping them over $1 million? Because I believe as we sit here today from the FOIA request that I did here this offseason, I believe Greg Harbaugh is the only offensive coordinator in the Big Ten to not make $1 million. And I believe Danny Collins is the lowest paid one on the defensive side, somewhere around $700,000. So that's where, before I let you give your opinion here, why I just think it's fascinating is it's such a gamble because you're not necessarily gambling if they don't perform because then you're just not going to owe any buyout money. But the thing is, if they don't perform, are you actually going to see administration give Fleck the money to go get a coordinator that is worth $1 million, or are we going to see an internal hire? Are we going to see? To be fair, I don't even know who the internal hire would be. It wouldn't, in my mind, it's not going to be Nick Monroe. So it's not like you're going to give it to Mariano Sori Marin at age like 25 or whatever he is. And then on
Mhm.
the offensive side, if you move on from Harbaugh, what does that mean for Drake Lindsey? Because I'll remind people, Greg Harbaugh is the one that has recruited, retained, developed for whatever you think of him as a coordinator. The quarterback coach in him is pretty dang good to me. So I just think it's fascinating one way or another to where who's going to have the leverage at the end of September, October, November. It, again, I know you think I'm crazy with this kind of stuff, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, we've had debates about this previously,
Sure.
and I'm on the stance of one, this was pretty common practice for a long time that coordinators and additionally just assistants in general are on 1 year renewable deals, right? They would negotiate and renew them every year. I get that that has changed a little bit. I
A
also
little
get
bit is putting it very kindly.
well, okay, but this is relatively new within the last 7 years.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I'd say that's a little bit. Um, now, as it comes to the relative compensation, the university has shown that they will commit. Apparently, they haven't committed enough because they haven't retained them, but they have committed. And I know we fundamentally disagree on this point, but I think your point is valid in that if they do well, are they willing to? I would argue probably end up when it comes to compensation, maybe even overpaying because both are pretty inexperienced, right? As it's relative to the market. Because if they can, the market dictates the price, so if they can go out and get it. Good for them. You know, there's an element of that.
So I guess my response to that would be I know you and I have had this discussion for years. That's why for the multiple people within the athletic department I posed it to is they have made a commitment to an extent with guys like Corey Heatherman and guys like Kirk Shiraka. But
Mhm.
my point to them is, okay, you're willing to give them an additional 200,000, 250,000. But when somebody comes in over the top of that and you need to match it at 400 or 450 or whatever it may
Yeah.
be, then it becomes we're just going to wash our hands. It's too expensive for us. We'll find the next guy. And maybe that they can do that. Again, Fleck has had more good coordinator hires than he's had bad. But it's
Yep.
also the point of where I've I guess in my old age now that I'm going to be 34 here in a couple weeks.
Sold.
Well, I just shake my fist at clouds. You know that better than anybody.
You're an older soul than you put on.
Oh, I know. It's dreadful. It is truly dreadful, but I just want to see action from the administration one way or another. Whether it's with Harbaugh, whether it's not with Harbaugh, whether it's with Danny Collins, whether it's not with Danny Collins. It's if they're earning like and I think the thing that is more important to me necessarily is give them the multi-year deal again. Like, because I think for any of us, if you knew that your deal was going to expire or you have a contract or whatever it may be, for those of us in everyday life like you and I, if
Mhm.
you know that in 6 months, like you don't know where you're going to be, I mean, there's just a little extra stress in the back of your mind with some of these things to me. So, again, that is just one of like the niche storylines. And it's going to be something I asked PJ Fleck about at Big Ten Media Days in Chicago is why did you elect to not extend them, to give them an extra year? Like, why are you electing to go into the season with both guys potentially? Because and why the other point of why I think it's interesting is Fleck yesterday at internal media day was like unprompted was like, well, we're the only Big Ten team with returning head coach, both coordinators and quarterback. So clearly he has some frame of reference, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see what he tells me about why he's elected to kind of put more pressure on those two, which to be clear to everyone here, including Luke Buer, I am okay with lighting a fire under both of their keisters. Like, especially on the offensive
Mhm.
side, like they have to find a running game. They got to become more explosive. You've got a lot more pieces than I think you've had the last year or two. And then defensively, they weren't bad last year, but they were horrific on the road. We've talked about it endlessly. So can Danny get them to play consistently? I don't know,
Mhm.
but I'm just telling you, it's one of the things I'll be monitoring, especially as we get into November.
Okay, that was not on my list, so we did not have as much
Bless.
overlap as we thought. All right. Uh, for me, number one on my list, can the Gophers have a sustained, consistent running game? Here, that it is a even season, we
Mhm.
should assume that the room will be healthy. But under the offensive coordinator, there has not been a consistent game to game running game that you can bank on like we had in previous years. Now, in previous years, you had the running back coach carrying the ball, and he tended to be pretty solid. I think you've put him on your Mount Rushmore of Gopher running backs.
Deservingly so. Yeah.
After you defamed him numerous times as a freshman.
What are
Um,
you, the lovely and handsome members of
yeah,
GopherGazette.com,
of course.
reminding me of that
So
now as he's a position coach still?
yeah,
Yeah.
so okay, but as we look at this, post Mo carrying the ball consistently, is this one of the better offensive lines that they've had? Because if it is, in theory, there are no excuses outside of the guy calling the plays, right?
So it's a great question to pose because as you lay out and as we've talked about, last year they were the worst rushing offense in the Big Ten. And
Mhm.
I've said it once, I'll say it one more time to just get everybody's juices flowing a little bit. Luke, are you aware that RTB in Dickeytown doesn't just stand for row the boat,
Yes,
it stands
it's
for
run the
run the
ball.
ball. And as I asked Greg Johnson about yesterday, the preseason All American offensive lineman, I've seen him on social media with a hat that says "Run the damn ball." Well, here's where I'm at with that group is the Minnesota Moving Company needs to figure it the F out too. Because Harbaugh is not without blame in this whole thing, and I've talked about it, and it feels like every time I say these points of like the running back room forced the least amount of missed tackles since year one of the Fleck era, or the offensive line. If you look at the advanced stats of say offensive line yards, something that Daniel House firmly believes in, I believe in, and if Daniel House believes in it, who is someone that we both believe should be in a front office somewhere, maybe we should give it a little bit of credence. And they have been horrific, like 100 something in the country the last 3 years. Now it all goes together, which is why Darius Taylor, as you said, the angry running back deity of your choice, it is an even year. So, in theory, Darius Taylor, in his continued use of Pilates, which I will continue to say, it is a strange moment in my life when even yesterday, Darius is talking because we asked him, "Are you still doing Pilates?" Because that was one of the things that he's trying to change with how he's going to take care of his body is try some different muscles. My man's out here trying to talk about his pelvic floor, which, look, that I feel like that is a very intimate type of conversation, not necessarily suited for a microphone and 10 media jackals staring at you. But I'm glad that he feels comfortable enough to be that vulnerable with us.
Yeah.
So if Darius can stay healthy, but it's also the guys behind Darius because we know at some point, because of the running back position in general, just such a violent position, it's going to have to be, can Coach Mo now find some mix of, and I'll continue to kind of say these three, four names are the ones that I think are going to be battling, where it's TJ Thomas, who's the Elon transfer, and he's going to be competing with Ryan Estrada to me for that scat back east west kind of third down type of. These aren't guys that I don't think you'll see get the ball more than 7 to 10 times a game, even if Darius goes down. But
Mhm.
it's also going to be Zeke Bates and say Xavier Ford, and then eventually AJ Turner, because I think AJ Turner is such a wild card in this whole run game discussion, where you and I would agree with, I think, this statement that AJ Turner, when he transfers into Minnesota from Marshall, was one of the most explosive G5 running backs. And the game looked fast for him in the non conference. And then he goes out to Cal and he tears his knee. Now, I anticipate AJ Turner participating in fall camp. But the question is going to be with AJ Turner, the further he gets away from that injury and further into his recovery, in theory, he's going to be stronger in October than he was September, November than he was October. So I almost have expectations for AJ Turner after the bye week, where if you can get a pair of fresh legs like that, or maybe the game is slowed down a little bit for him, he can help you out. But the crux of the thing is, Luke, it's a great storyline and question because Harbaugh has to find the right mix of backs. He's got to get this offensive line that, again, you have Nathan Roy returning at left tackle, who more than held his own as a redshirt freshman last
Hmm.
year. Greg Johnson is on the preseason hype train of hype trains right now, to which he's a preseason consensus All American. He's preseason Phil Steele All First Team. I'm just hoping with Greg Johnson that they keep him at one bleeping position because if you remember last year, Greg Johnson, as he reminded the media yesterday, started a game at left tackle for the first time in his life against Ohio State in
Yeah.
Columbus on a
Yeah.
silent count game for them because they couldn't hear. He also started a game at right tackle. He started all of 2024 at center. I firmly believe with this run game discussion, so much of it becomes if you can keep Greg Johnson at left guard to let him be one of the best interior linemen in the conference, it's going to be easier to run between the tackles. But the other part of that discussion is can Bennett Warren, the Tennessee transfer, who was one of the most high profile and highest paid transfer portal additions from this past year's portal class, they have spent the last 7 months completely rebuilding his body to the point where he was sub 290 at one point when he first got, or during spring ball, I believe.
Hmm.
Now, I've heard he's now north of 300. If you want to hear Greg Johnson, or I should say read Greg Johnson, Anthony Smith, and Ashton Beers think about it, I asked for their thoughts on Bennett Warren. They know him better than I do. So you can go read that on Gopher Gazette. But the other part of it too, Luke, is this is the first time in the Greg Harbaugh era, so now going into year 4, where they have a returning center. Because I think that is one of the most under talked about parts of why the run game has struggles is in 2022, you had your favorite center. Look, I'm a Greg Esslinger guy. You are the king of John Michael Schmidt's territory.
Correct.
Like you had a second round center, one of the best centers in Gopher football history. And then I say this with the utmost peace and love. You went from that to Nathan Bowe, who was fine. Like he was fine as a center, to then Greg Johnson, who had snapping problems. I think he had like 5 to 7 penalties that year at center. He just never looked comfortable. So they moved him. And then last year, Ashton Beers takes over. Well, Ashton Beers gets a high ankle sprain out at Cal Berkeley, plays through it, and then gets an elbow injury that's so serious that it requires off-season surgery. So, can Ashton Beers stay healthy? And if so, I just put him number 6 on my most indispensable Gopher list because I think Ashton Beers' play at center, like what was one of the topics we talked about last year where it was they stunk on like third and fourth and short because they couldn't generate knockback.
Hmm.
Like, guess what? Now you got Greg Johnson and Ashton Beers, and we'll figure out who's next to Ashton at right guard. And but it is such a great question. And if it's one, if you can just go from, and here's the thing, what would be your expectation for what is reasonable for the Gopher run game? Like, where in the conference would you be like, yeah, that's fine?
Um, let's see. Can I tell you a funny thing?
Yeah, what's up?
I had to think how many teams were in the Big Ten for a second before doing the math.
I mean, that is a fair thing now.
I would say, I'd say 10th.
Yeah, that's about where I was at in my mind because if you also can have a run game, well, guess what? That means the back seven actually has to respect the run game, which
Right.
means those play action fakes with Drake Lindsey and whoever he's throwing the ball to, boy, does that make it things easier to try and generate more explosives. Like the whole thing has
Mhm.
been largely disconjointed. Like the running game hasn't been able to complement the passing game. It's been like a long time since that happened consistently. So can they find that is such a great question, Luke.
Can I piggyback off something you said?
I hope
Not
so.
only is this the first time that they'll have a back-to-back center, this is the first time they'll have a back-to-back quarterback.
You're such an elite football mind. You
Just
are.
actually, I recognize patterns like AI, and then I just build on top of them.
I mean, that's where, to your point, it's Ethan Kaliak-Manis was in 2023, and then it was Max Brosmer, the Viking legend, in 2024, and last year it was Drake Lindsey, which is part of why the excuses for Harbaugh in terms of why this offense can't be better. They're, in theory, you got a returning quarterback, returning center. You've got Darius Taylor, who hopefully can be healthy. You've got Greg Johnson, Ashton Beers, Nathan Roy. Like, this thing should be better. It should be. So now they actually got to go out and do it. But it's a great point, Luke.
All right, that was mine. You went on a long tangent for it. So what's next on your list?
You know me. I miss getting on tangents with you, but the beautiful part is I can just get to look into those blue eyes of yours and just
Oh, yes.
fade away as I go off.
Beautiful.
Now, I guess let's get one on the defensive side of the ball then, which goes into the, how do I want to say this? Can this team travel?
Oh, that's a
Because,
great question because it did not travel at all last year. It actually
oh no.
couldn't have traveled any worse. Now, this
And
isn't the fans, this is the team.
yeah, I mean, the fans were there, and I was there with the fans. And trust me, fans, you, myself, and all of us, whether it was in Eugene, Oregon, Iowa City, Columbus. Boy, I'm trying to remember some of the other places I went last year with stuff like this, but or Cal Berkeley, again, that was like this team offensively, defensively, and on special teams just imploded. Like they could not string together a 60-minute game on the road. You have the Cal Berkeley game where the offense is struggling, and then Coy Parrish and special teams have one clink off his shin late in the third
Mhm.
quarter. Game flips on his head.
Also,
You
can we relive that one? Like, do you think if he just fields that
if
clean?
he just lets it go,
Yeah, I
like
I think they
even
win
if
that game.
Cal downs that at like the 4 yard line, I
Yeah,
mean that's a
I think
tough
they win
spot
that
to
game.
put your offense in, but it's not giving them the ball inside the 10. Like
Right.
so, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I'm with you. And I when you think about last season, they played some really tough games on the road, like tough
Which
opponents, I should say.
yes, you had. I mean, you played night games against Oregon and Ohio State. Like,
Yeah.
g-
And
but
not to mention they also played at Iowa and they absolutely put up a nothing burger in the first quarter.
well,
Like,
that's the whole gist of it too. Is think about that game again. That is one that myself and many others are going to remember because it's a rivalry game. You can say every game counts the same, and it does, but it doesn't all. Not all these mean the same. Like
yeah.
I remember Wisconsin and Iowa. Like I cover every single game, but I remember the Wisconsin and Iowa ones a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
better. So like even in that game, you had the offense implode where Drake Lindsey had his first poor performance. The defense couldn't get off the field, and then guess what? You have somehow have a special teams return touchdown against you in that one as well. Again,
Yeah.
you got the Northwestern game where the offense figures it out. The defense can't figure out one of the most inept offenses in the Northwestern Wildcats last year, and then your kicker misses 2 field goals. So, I mean, that's part of the bit is if we're just going to keep this to the defensive side of the ball, that has been my retort to some defensive staff members is if you look at their overall stats, they were, I think, good to above average. Okay. Overall.
Well, in the aggregate, yes, in the aggregate.
And it's a lot of that was at home where they had some really good performances or even in the bowl game, they were
Yeah, like
tremendous.
Nebraska. Yeah.
But, but you were on the road. I talked about it endlessly on this podcast and on Gopher Gazette was opposing quarterbacks became Heisman Trophy contenders against you. They completed like 75% of their passes. It was something crazy before the bowl game, like 11 or 12 touchdowns and no picks. Like
Mhm.
they could just do whatever they wanted, and part of that is because the defensive line rarely traveled. They were out there. I saw
Mhm.
their names and numbers, but they weren't generating havoc. And yes, again, there were some difficult games in there, Ohio State and Oregon, but I think about that Northwestern game or the Iowa game or the Cal game or even the Cal game. That's not necessarily on the defense, that's more on the offense and the special teams. But PJ Fleck figuring out why it was last year that whether it was some later kickoff times like at Cal Berkeley, like you have to be able to travel because that game at the end of September this year against your Washington Huskies
Yeah.
like is so massive because if you want to have the type of ceiling season that you believe that you're capable of, and I would say I think there's optimism behind the scenes. Now there always is this time of year. Trust me, I
Yeah,
get it.
always.
But you have to be able to at least put up a fight. You like the bell would ring last year, and by the end of the first round, you're out. Like they're already counting you down on the mat. So if you can just hold in there for a few more rounds and make this thing actually competitive, I think everybody involved will be much more happy with the performance.
Yeah, so this dovetails nicely into one of the things on my list. A storyline that's important for me. Like they were able to generate a lot of sacks, mainly in a handful of specific games, if we want to
Sure.
look at that. But the aggregate numbers were pretty good.
Mhm.
But what we need to see them do, and you'd hope that they can do, is generate pressure with four, right?
Right.
That is something I want to see so that you can develop that back seven and also not hang that back seven out on an island where your risk of giving up an explosive play is now much higher if they don't perform, for example. That's something that I am hopeful for because I'm optimistic that they have the talent, right? You've got Bush, you've got Anthony Smith, you've got Carter Menz, right? You
Yep.
can add in Jackson Howard. We don't know about the defensive tackles, but can you get more of can you get a defensive tackle to be an actual pressure guy so that it's not purely the defensive ends, right? But can
Mhm.
you get pressure with four? That's the thing that I think can really help that defense take and rise to the next level, but also be much more consistent in the season, whether that's home or away, because pressure travels.
Pressure does travel, and that's where at home last year, I'm looking at it right now. Where do you think the Gophers ranked in sacks per game among all Big Ten teams that played at home last year?
Oh, they'd be number one or
They
two.
led the conference at 4
Yeah.
sacks per game. Indiana was at 3.4. No other team was above 3. And that's where on the road, they went from 4 sacks per game at home to 1.8 on the road. And that's where some of it is who you played, but also they just didn't travel. And that's where, in theory, on paper, you've got pass rushers, like you said, where you've got a lot of different pitches to give a little baseball reference here with your pass rushers too, where Anthony Smith is going to go down as one of the most powerful bull rushing, length extending Minnesota defensive ends to ever put on the jersey, which is why if he doesn't even necessarily even have to duplicate statistically what he did last year. If he just has 10 sacks and 14 something tackles for loss, he's going to become the all-time leader in Gopher history in both sacks and tackles for loss. Now, in theory, you've got Carter Menz on the other side, who is not a power guy. He's a speed guy. He's beat you around. He's trying to beat you with speed. And then you've got TJ Bush, who's not going to beat you necessarily with one move or one pitch. He's Mr. Crafty, where if you can find a way to get all three of them SOBs on the field at the same time, plus you add in somebody like Zion Chapman, who is a transferred defensive tackle Minnesota took from Florida International, who was a very good pass rusher at DT in the G5, or if you can get something from Jalen Hicks or Naquan Crowder, Theo Randall, whoever it may be, you have a great point, Luke, where if you can actually generate pressure with four and not have to send Emmanuel Carmo or Maverick Baranowski or Matt Kingsbury, if you can just drop back seven, you're going to have opportunities to take some, again, number one, keep mobile quarterbacks in front of you, which
Mm-hmm.
that's spoiler. We're going to get into that here very, very quickly. But generating pressure with four is, in theory, something that Minnesota should not struggle with. And if they don't, boy, does that likely mean good things for this defense.
Yeah, and that's the thing that was always interesting was statistically the way that we quantify strong defensive lines is usually sacks. So you look at the Gophers and the numbers are high, but I just don't think that they were this was a general problem all over the Gopher roster last year, which was just being a complementary football team. But even on the defense, they were not always complementary, right?
Sure.
Because they couldn't get that consistent pressure with four. They had to blitz often to be able to get the pressure. But we do think that they have some of the pieces, and I think that's generally one of the strategies that feels like came out in talent acquisition in the offseason. Is they are targeting trying to get a stronger defensive line, uh, and I think they have accomplished it. Now they have to stay healthy because they don't have that margin for error. But if they can, I'm optimistic that this can be a way that the defense can really take that next step.
Yeah, and here's what I'll say as that's going to be part of it is one of the things that, especially defensively here early on, we're going to find out about is can Minnesota contain mobile quarterbacks? Because they go from, I don't think necessarily JKS or Dante Moore are what I'm talking about, like actual running legitimate quarterbacks. And why that's important is because they didn't really play any last year. Well, guess what? Off the rip here, you get three in your first five that are incredibly dangerous with their legs. Week
Yeah.
two, that 2:30 CBS game against Mississippi State, you get Kamario Taylor, who Kamario Taylor has only started two games. And guess what? With his arm, that's not necessarily what I'm worried about. It's with his legs where he can absolutely destroy you. He is 6'3", 6'4", and incredibly athletically gifted, and he can run. Like he can run for a 70-yard touchdown run. So can you contain him? Week 4, your first road game, your guy, Mr. LSU himself, Damon Williams,
Yes.
he is absolutely a threat to break the pocket and take off with his legs and beat you right there. And then guess who comes in week 5 for their first road game? And not Minnesota's, because Minnesota gets to return home for the little brown jug. Bryce Underwood comes in week 5, where I'm much more worried about Bryce Underwood's legs than I am his arm beating me.
Yeah.
So, and at the end of the season, think about the Wisconsin game. What does Colton Joseph do really well? Or what did he do really well at Old Dominion? Run the ball. Like you go from not necessarily facing a lot of mobile slash running quarterbacks, where I'm talking design quarterback runs are a very big part of what they do, to you've at least got 4 on the schedule and 3 in your first 5.
Hmm.
So I know that's something I've talked about with some staff members behind the scenes of just being like, am I crazy for like thinking this is such a change of pace from what you guys faced last year to what you're going to have to figure out immediately? And they acknowledge they're working on it. But that goes in hand with your pass rush thing in terms of how do you contain a mobile quarterback? Well, if I'm going to put on my Derek Burns hat, my favorite second cousin, it's all about pass rush lane integrity. What does that mean? That means Carter Menz, TJ Bush, and Anthony Smith on the outside, they can't get too deep. They can't get so deep that they're past the quarterback and then the quarterback can just step up and run against Emmanuel Carmo, Maverick Baranowski, uh, Emmanuel Carmo, Matt Kingsbury, those type of guys. Like
Hmm.
you have to just get to the level of the quarterback and then keep them in there. And the same thing goes for the defensive tackles. Just don't necessarily try to rush the passer, try to extend your arms, create space, and then kind of shift to the right and the left of the offensive lineman to see, is he about to run past me? And if so, I need to at least get an arm on him. But that's where if you can just figure out how to contain those guys in the pocket, that is such a big part of what is going to be a massive early slate before the bye week is containing Kamario Taylor for Mississippi State, Damon Williams for Washington, and then Bryce Underwood, because those are 3 games that Minnesota's got to at least come away with one, hopefully multiple, if not all 3, if you really want to dream on it.
All right. How many more storylines do you have? I'm curious how many more we got to get through.
Why don't you give me your next one and we'll see how long it takes.
Well, I'm curious. I want to get through all of them. A couple of mine can be very quick.
Go for it.
All right. Uh, do you know what PJ Fleck's Big Ten record is all time at the University of Minnesota?
Oh, it's better than what people think, because I know that at least my social media mentions or from the casuals always talk about how he should be fired. Um, I'm not, for the record here, I'm not advocating for a 10-year extension here. I'm just telling you, I know it's better than what Kill did. I know it's better than what Mason did. I think he's like, is it 8 games above 500?
In the Big Ten, he is one game below 500,
Okay.
but that is better than predecessors. And there's
Yep.
arguments can be made about the conference and all that. But a storyline for me is he has the opportunity to end the season with a greater than 500
Hmm.
Big Ten winning percentage. Now, it's not going to be easy. Every Big Ten season is challenging. In the 9 seasons that have been played, I think it's 9, right? Yeah, I think it's 9 that have been played. He has had a winning record 5 times,
Yep.
and he has had a losing record 4 times. So to me, the question here is, can he be above 500 in his first 10 years at the University of Minnesota? No small feat for reasons that you have detailed in great length numerous times over, with dealing with recruiting radius, dealing with these days,
Not an easy
NIL
job.
and
Right.
all that, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think that is another proof point. I think it'll be it'll be proof to me that he was the right hire. And now, what can the next 10 years be? Now, people probably laugh with that when I say that, but who would have thought he'd have been here 10 years after 2019, right? I
I
don't think
mean,
anybody would have had money on that.
I've asked him
And
that on the record, and he has said, "I didn't think I was going to be here for 10 years when they first hired me." Yet
yeah,
here we are.
here
So
we are. Yeah, and it's a
yeah.
it's a it's a job, I think, that fits his persona and personality well.
Mhm.
Being an underdog, that crack on the shoulder analogy that he used before, when he at his introductory press conference.
Yeah.
And sometimes consistency is really what can help a program like Minnesota, and that continuity going forward. So for me, I'm curious to see, can he eclipse that 500 record mark?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I know that I've looked at least over the last 5 years, because I try to give at least some context for what the numbers mean, which is why I'm glad you did, for just overall in 9 years. And that's where I went back and looked of what the conference winning percentage numbers are for the last 5 years for teams in the Big Ten. Uh, I don't know if we've talked about this. I don't remember where I've talked about it. So do you know where Minnesota's at in relative comparison to the other 18 teams in the Big Ten in just conference play?
I think
Where
they're in the
would you
top
put them
half.
winning percentage wise?
I put them in the top half. I'd probably put them like 8.
They're seventh.
Okay.
They have the seventh best conference winning percentage over the last 5 seasons. And that's where it's not about where you are, it's where you're going. So I
Hmm.
think the point that we both want to see here, and that's where it's, can you finish above 500 if they do it this fall in conference play for the fifth time in 6 years, which for the University of Minnesota has been historically very tough to do.
Hmm.
So can you do it again? And I think that leads me into my next question storyline, just overarchingly, is, can you finally find the ceiling season?
Yeah.
Because the thing that I know fans don't like to talk about is just some years, like, you just don't have the ingredients to do it. Like, you just don't have the veteran laden talent. And that's where I get, like, I think about like this Twins team. Like, should they buy or sell at the deadline? They should absolutely sell, because they just don't have the talent. Now in 2027 and 2028, I'm very optimistic on them. But how it reties here to Go for Football is, in theory, if your guys such as Greg Johnson and Ashton Beers and Nathan Roy give you a left side of the line that you can consistently pass protect on and can consistently run the ball behind, great. You've got a quarterback in Drake Lindsey, who I think is arguably the most gifted guy that they've had in my 16 years of covering this team. And he's coming off a season that was very good as a redshirt freshman. You've got an NFL running back in Darius Taylor when healthy. And then on the defensive side, you've got difference makers at all three levels. You've got Anthony Smith, Carter Menz. At linebacker, you've got a returning 100 tackle guy in Maverick Baranowski. You've
Mhm.
got John Nestor and Kerry Brown at corner. And that's where the more time I've spent thinking about it, I'm not necessarily predicting right now, to be clear here in late July, that they're going to go out and win 9 games, go 9-3, be a ranked team at the end of the season. But they've at least got the ingredients to where you can look at yourself and say, okay, you've got the talent where you're going to have NFL draft picks next year for Anthony Smith, Greg Johnson, Darius Taylor, potentially Kerry Brown. And we can go down the list here, but that's at least 3 NFL draft picks that are going to be at least day 2 guys to me if they're healthy. Greg Johnson, Anthony Smith, and then I think Darius Taylor, where I trust me, I'm going to understand the question marks about his speed and his durability, but if he catches another 40 balls this year to pass our guy, Little Canada legend Chuck Rios, he's
Mhm.
going to end up
Another
top 10 all
storyline.
time in Gopher receptions in history, which
Mhm.
there's a lot of value in pass catching backs in the NFL. And then you look at the schedule. You've got difficult games. It's Big Ten in 2026. But I think you would agree with me when I say Minnesota has played a lot better at home than they have on the road against ranked opponents.
Mhm.
So I think about Michigan coming to town, Iowa coming to town, that early game against Mississippi State. Like you get to face UCLA in November. You get Northwestern in November, where again, Northwestern's a team that Minnesota has just, there have been some weird and wonky games. Well, guess what? You get Northwestern this year on game 10 in a row for them.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, you still have to travel to Happy Valley. Yeah, you still got to beat Iowa, which is something that, especially for PJ Fleck, has been just an unmitigated disaster. Yeah, you got to go to Washington. You've got the Badgers at the end of the season, but you can at least tell yourself a story where between the talent in the schedule, especially in that first half, where it's like the first 7 games, where you have the Michigan game in October, you've got the Iowa game. Can you get past Mississippi State early? What happens when you actually travel on the road to Washington? Can this be the one? Because we talked about it, whether it's the live event curse that you and I are trying to do our part to end now,
We're trying.
we're having the live event now at the end of August. Can this be where you get to November and you're sitting there 6-2, you're sitting there 7-1? I'm not necessarily, like I said, I'm not saying that it's something that I'm going to go on record with by the time I get through fall camp and kind of get to my final trials and tribulations of what I believe this team's going to be. But I can at least sell myself on, if the stars are the stars, if Drake Lindsey and Darius Taylor, Greg Johnson, Nathan Roy, Anthony Smith, Carter Menz, Mav Baranowski, Kerry Brown, John Nestor. I mean, we can keep going here. Like, if they're stars, you're gonna have a shot here, and then it could be, we could have some fun on this podcast, man.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I do want to highlight, I do appreciate Dan Owen playing the role of producer, threw a good stat over to us during the episode here. So even though people thought my demise was here, Dan is adding a ton of value here in the podcast. Thank you, Dan. Uh, he did tweet back in 2022 that that PJ Fleck brought his Big Ten record to 500 at 22-22. That was the first time since week 5 of 1992 after Jim Wacker won the Big Ten, his first Big Ten game. So just to put that into perspective of how much consistency we've had over these last years, and the other context to put, PJ started 2-7 and 3-6, right?
Yeah.
In his first 2 seasons, then had the 7-2 ceiling season. Man, I think we're due for a ceiling season, and that would put him over 500. Now, we're not predicting a ceiling season, right? At least not
Not
yet.
yet.
But the point is, we understand it. The fan bases do, and this is what really can rally the fan base in a lot of ways.
Well, that's where, like, um, again, I would say Johnny Rain Club, but I don't want to date myself. I'll say Buzz Killington. I get accused of being Buzz Killington. As you said, I'm an older soul than what my, by the way, when that Jim Wacker game happened in, I assume, early October of 92,
Yeah.
I was maybe 7, 8 weeks old, to
Yeah.
give some perspective here. Like, it's really hard place to win, the University of Minnesota. So, like, I can just, I know that I'm usually more pessimistic than optimistic, and that bothers some of our listeners, and I apologize for that. but I can at least sell myself, like I said, that you've got the talent and the schedule isn't insane to where you can talk yourself into. If you take care of business like you did at home where you were 7-0 and you can emerge from your home slate 6-1, where it's I will remind people that's going to be
Hmm.
a difficult task because you got an SEC team early, you've got Michigan, Iowa, UCLA, Northwestern. I'm trying to remember the other one right off the top of my head here, but it's not one to where like you this is just a team for Fleck for whatever reason that plays better at home against ranked opponents. And then that's where Michigan and Iowa, I assume, will be ranked when they come here. But if you can be, say, I don't know, what would you say they again Mississippi State, Michigan, and Iowa specifically here? Like,
Yep.
if you're going to have a ceiling season, you need to go 3-0 there because I keep forgetting that they get to travel to the national champions on Halloween.
Well,
So
and Happy Valley, right?
and
So
Seattle, where Washington's been tremendous, but again, you just have to figure out how to play at home and then travel on the road, steal one somewhere. You can't have the PJ Fleck annual inexplicable loss game
yeah.
where like 2 of the last 3 years that's been Northwestern for a myriad of reasons. But like I even think about remember that Illinois game where
Oh,
they're
that was like 2021, maybe.
oh my gosh, where Illinois' backup quarterback comes in on 4th down and like 2-3 plays later they score. Like
Yeah.
you
Oh,
can't
no,
have the
you're talking
inexplicable
about the
loss.
late one, that
Yeah.
late one that they gave up that touchdown. I thought you were thinking about the 2021 game where the the Gophers were I think a solid favorite and just got the doors knocked off them. Not like in the scoreboard, but they just got beat up. Um,
Yeah, like again, last year it's Northwestern. That
yeah.
should that game should never. I mean, that's a game you have to win. You score 35 points in Big Ten play, you should win that game. 2024, you've got kicking debacles against
Yeah.
North Carolina. You have the fourth quarter to forget and Piscataway. Again, we can get to 2023, and then it's again you can't have the inexplicable loss game that
Yeah.
seemingly bites them once a year in the Fleck era.
Yeah. Okay, I think it's on you, man.
All
What's
right,
still on
I'll
your
give you
list?
one more because I know that again we have some sort of time constraints here, but I got to stick to the brand here. Okay, you're not going to like
Mhm.
this.
Okay.
Can they just have competent special teams?
I knew that's where you were going. I was waiting for when you were going to go to special teams, and I know you don't love the two place kickers that don't have experience bit. You're probably more in on Tom Weston than you were last year at this time. Uh, Returners, my guess is you are
I mean, you lose
shrug
Coy.
emoji.
Yeah,
So
like here's here's what why I say it the way that I did is Bill Conley again does great work for
yep,
ESPN.
S&P
I think
plus.
has
Yep.
really advanced the space, especially in advanced analytics. You look at what his ranking was just with his model and data for special teams playing the Big Ten last year. The Gophers were dead last, 18th. So I think about the games that Minnesota has lost recently, whether it's the Northwestern game, it's the Cal game, the Iowa game, like special teams. I just want to be competent. I'm not saying be good. I'm just saying, can you have a kicker make more than 50 something percent of his kicks from 40 plus yards? And that's where it'll be interesting to see if Beckham Sunderland or Daniel Jackson, whoever it ends up being, again, they made the decision. No one forced them at gunpoint, from what I'm aware, to go into the season with two guys who've never attempted a field goal in a game before. It's an interesting strategy after struggling a kicker last year. Now, every year is independent, and there is maybe no more position outside of quarterback that is more mental than specialists and kicking specifically. So, Daniel DePrado, who is the new special teams coordinator, has a great recent track record with kickers. Now, say what you will about Texas State and New Mexico, but those are still games where there are tens of thousands of fans in the stadium. So the hope would be he can figure it out there. The hope would be the other calling card for the new special teams coordinator is his return prowess, where kick and punt return have been assets for the teams that he's worked on. I would just love to come on this podcast and be able to talk about fantastic, consistent special teams play, because that's also a part of the whole bit of, oh, you want to have a ceiling season? Well, guess what? You won 8 games last year with the worst special teams in the Big Ten. Imagine if Coy Parrish doesn't have it hit him in the shin, or Caden Wheatgen doesn't return the punt for a touchdown against Iowa, or you have a kicker who can do anything at Wrigley Field. Then we get to 8 to 9 wins there. But if you're going to have a ceiling season, you just got to be competent, man. So it's going to be on DePrado to figure out whoever is returning kicks and punts, since it won't be Coy Parrish. And I think a lot of it just comes back down to, for me, kicking. I just want to see, in a day and age where it feels like in the NFL, like 60-yard field goals, you're almost expecting the kicker to hit them at this point. I just want to get back to, especially after the last 2 years, like, I just want to have confidence that if it's a 43-yard field goal at the end of the first half, 4 out of 5 times that should go through for the maroon and gold kicker. So I hope DePrado can get them back to at least respectability, somewhere between 8th and 10th in the Big Ten in that regard.
Okay, I got one more on my list that we can get to. I think it's worthy of some time.
Okay.
We kind of touched on it already. This is the second year of a consistent quarterback. But can he make the leap that the hype on social media and the draft projections are actually getting at?
So my retort to you is going to be this, because it's a question that has been asked to me, and I'm curious how you respond to this.
Sure.
Is, what does that mean? Because if he even just duplicates last year to me, 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and you complete 60+% of your passes, like, I think every Gopher fan would be like, that's probably a pretty dang good year. Now you're hoping that instead of 18 passing touchdowns and 6 interceptions,
it's 24, and yeah.
Correct. But that's where I'm curious. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I guess I was trying to largely jokingly say, like, there's been some speculation, and I get that that's draft people's thing. That's what they need to do, right?
Sure.
Of him being a first rounder. I'd love for him to be a first rounder next year, because likely we did hit that ceiling season. Now, I guess my greater point is, can he keep those same kind of efficiency numbers but grow the counting numbers, right? That would be wonderful.
Yep.
And as you said, this is probably, at least from a pure ability standpoint, maybe the best quarterback we've had in the years we've done the podcast, right? Not athletically maybe, but just as a processor, as arm talent, etc. And can he fulfill kind of some of those desires that we'd like to see? That's my thing, because I think the talent around him relative to other programs, probably he doesn't have the talent, and that gives him some props based on at least the efficiency numbers that he got and how they can project him even going forward. And frankly, just the ease at which he throws the ball, like, I can see why people like him.
Well, and that's where it's been interesting to follow him throughout the offseason here. Because again, he's had an offseason to an extent with the whole thing down in Fayetteville. Or even yesterday, again, I asked him, like, where you at weight wise? Because again, it's a talking point of, like, where is Drake Lindsey get better outside of statistical counting numbers? Okay, well, I think everybody agrees Drake needs to become more nimble in the pocket, be able to escape a little bit more. And that's where he said he came in as a true freshman. Now, again, this is over 2 years ago, at like 245, 247 pounds. That's not what he played at last year. I would imagine he's probably closer last year. I'd say 235-ish is where he was at, maybe 240. I mean, he said yesterday, I think around 228. And that's where he's gone through a lot of work with a personal chef, which, God bless RevShare and NIL, to be able to look at him actually using it to reinvest in himself. but he does like body scans to know like what he's at body fat percentage wise. He said last year, even speed wise, the fastest on the catapult like training thing that they wear, the fastest he ever ran in a straight line was 18 miles an hour or something. He cracked 20 here in the off season. I'm
Let's
not
go.
telling you we're gonna see the Winnipeg Blue Bomber that was Chris Streveler, even though Luke's trying to emulate his beard. But I'm telling you, he's at least put in the time. And that's where I almost think, as much as that is about Drake Lindsey here, I think the number one person who may reflect or has the biggest impact on what Drake Lindsey's next step looks for offensively, scoring, passing touchdown wise, is Darius Taylor. Because if Drake Lindsey can actually have a run game where if when Darius was healthy last season, we've talked about this, the 4 games he had 19 or more carries, he's going to run for 5 something a carry. That's all Darius Taylor, that's all Darius does when he's healthy. Go look at his stats over the last 3 years. When Darius gets touches in a game, he's going to average 5 something a carry.
Mm-hmm.
And if that means that linebackers and safeties and corners actually suck up on play action, or they have to just put more men in the box, that means Drake's going to get the opportunity to air it out a little bit more and not have as much congestion around whoever he's throwing the football to. So it's a great question, Luke, because I want to know what the next step is for him. Non-statistical counting stats, I guess I would say. And I think he's done that to an extent, just trying to get his body in better shape to, because I think his mind is one of the most underrated parts of him is, yeah, he looks down on me at 6'4" as I'm asking him for, I was asking him for tips with my driver swing, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why I was doing that?
Because of your trip to Launchpad, of course.
Well, yes. But Drake is also, when he was a teenager, like one of the best golfers for
Oh,
his
that
age
yeah,
in the
I did know
country.
that. You're right.
Yeah, that's where he humbly tells me yesterday. I go, how far can you hit your driver? He goes, I carry about 300. And I'm just like, oh, good for you. What's it like to be 6'5", 6'6", and just be able to carry it? Anyways, but if you can just give Drake Lindsey a run game, I feel like that goes hand in hand with the next step for him, which is we saw what he could do last year without a running game, and he put up good stats. Well, if you want the touchdown numbers to become more gaudy, if you
Mm-hmm.
want the yards per attempt to get out of the bottom of the cellar where he's just not having to check it down consistently, he needs Darius Taylor and then the running back coach, Mo, to be able to give him consistently 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2. And that's where I don't know if we've talked about on the podcast here. That's one of the things that Mo told me is now in the running back room is a saying that he's got on the wall, which I think is just the epitome of his career, by the way. And I like that he's leaning into it. 4 plus 4 plus 4 equals first down. Like
It, yeah.
that was the Mo Ibrahim way of I'm not like the first and second quarter, whatever, but I'm going to body blow you into this third and the fourth quarter where we can get PJ Fleck's favorite dream, which is a 9-minute fourth quarter drive that just sucks the soul out of you, which is
Mm-hmm.
something Minnesota hasn't been able to largely do. So if Mo can get Darius to stay healthy, and they're working on it, which also here's a funny story that they told yesterday. So Darius was talking about how former Gopher backs have called him to like give
Mm-hmm.
advice. And so, the media jackal that we are, follow up on that. Who's called you? He goes, yeah, Mo called me when I was a freshman. And after a game he watched, he was like, hey, yo, I know the stats look good, but you suck. And I was like, wow. So and that's where I even asked Darius yesterday, is there like a level, because you've seen Mo do it at a high level? Like, does Mo's words maybe resonate with you a little bit more because he's got the film in the recent, like he's got whatever, the street cred. Do the kids still say that, by the way? Street is all right.
I don't know if
Again,
my
I'm
kids
so
say that,
old now.
and they're young, but they're young.
I think
So
actually the kids would say he's got the aura,
my kids
as
say
I
that.
these youths and whippersnappers, whatever they are these
Yeah.
days. Like Can they embrace what Mo's trying to put down, which is you don't have to hit the home run every time. There's a
Mhm.
lot of value is in just getting 3, 4 yards instead of trying to bounce it and then it's 2nd and 12. Take what's in front of you. And if they can do that, Drake Lindsey, I think, in this offense can get to a level that they haven't been in the Greg Harbaugh era.
All right, I think that's probably going to do it for us. This was fun, Ryan. It was fun to go back and forth. It's fun to look forward to the season that will be, and we hope that you will join us at Launchpad at Mystic Lake for our kind of kickoff event there. This will be on the 24th, so mark your calendar. We'll get actual time-specific things to you later. Daniel House will join us again. It should be really fun. Any parting thoughts before we sign off?
No, I'm just excited that it's 6 weeks away. I mean,
Yeah.
the theoretical is not theoretical anymore. Again, very soon on
Mhm.
this podcast, we'll be talking about fall camp impressions. We'll be previewing the offense and the defense, and much greater like we're gonna know what we have because again, even Fleck yesterday is trying to talk up this true freshman class, saying that especially with 5-for-5, you're going to see these guys probably play more snaps than they would on a non
Oh
five
yeah,
for
and
five type of deal.
yeah.
But we're going to find out a lot more about this team over the next 5-6 weeks, and we can't express enough how excited we are to have you guys along for the ride.
All right. Want to thank you again for listening. It's always fun to kick off a season, and it's especially fun to talk through the preseason stuff as we get ready for that first game and we build into that excitement. So, thanks for listening, and go Gophers.